We're back for Your Ears Only. I'm David Alpern.
I'm Melissa Exelberth with a quote from the news. Today, Syria. Tomorrow, your country. That was Iran's President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad warning the Muslim world against intervention in the bloody opposition to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, whose forces massacred at least 200 last week. Ahmadinejad was also trying to redefine the Arab Spring as promoting Islam, not democracy. Now this.
Number one, no one is immune in the current situation. It's not just a Eurozone crisis, it's a crisis that could have collateral effects, spillover effects around the world.
In the past 2 years, we worked hard to overcome the crisis. We made considerable progress, but we are not yet at the end of the road. We must continue to bring down public debts and to stabilize the Eurozone while at the same time securing growth and jobs.
There was a familiar warning at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland last week from International Monetary Fund Managing Director Christine Lagarde and measured optimism in Brussels from European Union President Herman Van Rompuy. The Brussels meeting also produced yet another action plan to reduce the threat of financial disaster in Greece and other hard-pressed nations and many of the continent's major banking houses.
And to talk about the view from those financial peaks for Your Ears Only, we're pleased to welcome back Ian Bremmer, president of Eurasia Group, international risk consultants, and an active participant at the Davos Summit. Thanks for joining us again.
Happy to be with you.
You report a backstage shift in priorities by German Chancellor Angela Merkel, even more pronounced than what we've seen in public from the woman most in control of Europe's monetary lifeline and its impact on U.S. economic psychology. What's the bottom line?
Well, the bottom line is she's talking more about growth, less about austerity. They've made a lot of pressure on the Southern Europeans, and they understand how difficult that's being, and they're backing off the pressure a bit. And they're also showing some willingness to compromise on just how much sovereignty will be slipped away from the core states in Europe when a fiscal compact eventually comes. So clearly they're tipping their hand, showing that, money will eventually be there, more money will be there, and less dominance from Germany, but not enough to make the markets happy.
But you say many at Davos worked hard not to seem too relieved. Why?
Well, first, they weren't in the private meetings, and secondly, because they want all the money now, and the pressure has not worked its way through. We don't have yet an agreement on fiscal compact, and until that happens, the Germans are going to be unwilling to provide, sort of simply sign the check. Their greatest leverage is the day before the check actually gets signed.
What reaction did you witness to the latest moves in Brussels to shore up the Eurozone with more capital resources and budgetary discipline?
I think what we saw at the Brussels summit was greater willingness on the part of the European Central Bank to actually, show that they were willing to buy up bonds irrespective of the price. And, that does buy them more time. Look, that's where we basically are at this point, muddling through is not just a matter for 2011 in Europe, it's a matter for 2012 as well. That means that the recession in Europe will probably be larger and broader than it will otherwise be, but it also means that the Eurozone is not going to fundamentally fragment.
The greatest concern in Davos was about Iran, you say, the prospects for an Israeli air attack to cripple its nuclear program, effects of any counterstrike, or an oil cutoff by Tehran to counter a European boycott and other sanctions. Was there a consensus on the likeliest scenario?
No, there wasn't a consensus at all. What there was a lot of market worry that either the Iranians are going to provoke a strike or that the Israelis are going to go by themselves to engage in one. Part of that, the Israelis, of course, want everyone to believe that. And one thing the Israelis did quite impressively is they got everyone, whether it was Likud Party, Kadima, or Labor, to talk from the same hymn sheet, pardon the next metaphor, on to what extent there's likelihood of Iranian strikes. They were using the same language. They really coordinated policy. You weren't seeing them do that 6 months ago. The fact that the Israelis want us to believe that there are going to be strikes is very different from the fact that there will be strikes, of course. And at this point, I personally am skeptical, but it's possible. It's not a 0% likelihood in the next 3 to 6 months, and that is indeed a danger.
How was the Arab Spring looking in Davos, especially continued bloodshed in Syria, with no nation really ready to intervene with real force, even just language, as we saw at the United Nations this weekend?
Yeah, well, my view is that the G0, the lack of global leadership, has a greater impact in the Middle East immediately than anywhere else in the world. We're seeing that literally just today with the Russians and the Chinese now vetoing jointly a Security Council resolution, a call for some form of intervention and denunciation that would open the doors for meaningful pressure to stop Assad from what's been escalatory violence. Look, we've got a civil war in Syria right now, and certainly we don't have international leadership trying to provide stability in other parts of the Middle East. It means that fragmentation in Iraq becomes more likely. It means that we're seeing just a lot of danger across the board in all of these conflicts. This really is one of the biggest flashpoints in the world today, and it's one that at Davos, folks, right after Europe, folks were more concerned about the Middle East than anything else, more than U.S. growth, more than Chinese hard landing. That's where the focus was.
You say there was not a good word to be heard in Davos about President Obama, his economic recovery efforts and prospects for re-election, albeit you guys left before the good economic news at the end of this past week.
Yeah, I mean, more confidence that companies are going to start actually putting money into the American economy. The CEOs absolutely feel that way, but nobody likes Obama. I mean, from a CEO perspective, they don't have access to the White House. They don't really like that, and they also feel like the elections are going to see no legislation whatsoever. So that's kind of where we are.
What do you think the reaction would have been to the economic news that so cheered the Democrats at the end of the week?
Oh, no, I think that reaction is positive, and I think that clearly Obama has a greater likelihood of winning right now. It's very clear that it's Obama versus Romney. Frankly, I think it's been clear for several months right now, but I wouldn't go farther than that in terms of what the implications are for 2013. Generally speaking, I think the markets right now, and particularly the CEOs, the hedge fund owners, the financiers that you see at Davos, a lot of them have been so emotionally distraught by their lack of access to the Obama White House that I think they take that to mean that you're not going to see any prospect for improved U.S. governance after a potential Obama win. I think that's emotion speaking. It's not logic. In a second Obama term with likely a Republican Senate and Republican House, there's only one way for Obama to go to get any governance done, and that way is clearly going to be positive for the U.S. markets, but you can't say that at this point to most of the key business leaders from the U.S. that were attending Davos.
Ian Bremmer is president of Eurasia Group, international risk consultants.
Now, this quote from the news: "The military is taking revenge on us." That was a 24-year-old Egyptian demonstrator voicing the popular belief that police stood by as violence erupted at a Port Said soccer match, leaving at least 74 dead, to punish fans who had previously joined pro-democracy protests and to dramatize the need for continued army control of the country.
Next, to begin Black History Month, remembering the Red Tails, film and fact, for your ears only.